Hello and welcome to Step Forward and Talk. This is our first video recording, and we're happy to sit down with Ericka McLeod, Grassroots Liaison to Humanity Forward. She's been an integral part of our movement from the campaign to building up Humanity Forward, and thank you for taking some time out of your day.
Yeah, happy to be here. This is exciting for me. My first live podcast to be on. This is great. Thanks for having me.
When did you meet Andrew? Like, what was that? How did you get involved
What's my
in his
backstory for the
nonprofit? Yeah,
Yang?
what's your origin
Yeah.
story?
Yeah, my origin story. Where do I start? Okay, so I've been living in DC. I used to live in DC. Right now I'm in Maryland. I'm in New Jersey, staying at my childhood home. And for the last 25 years, I've been living down in the Maryland, D.C. area. And I work consulting for IT. And at my job, I don't remember what happened, but we were talking about Elon Musk and how he endorsed this guy, this random guy. And I was like, well, who is this guy that Elon Musk would endorse? And I started looking around just to see what he was about, and I was like, "Oh, he seems kind of cool." And I saw the one of the debates, and he was on the stage, and I was like, "Wow, he says some pretty logical things. I like that. I like what he's talking about." And then I really started digging in after I saw the Joe Rogan podcast. Actually, I can't remember if I saw Joe Rogan or Sam Harris first. I'm not sure which one came first for me.
It's important. It's important because that shows how OG you are. So,
Oh, for real?
yeah. So
Yeah.
early adopters were Harris, and then the Rogan spike were common Yang Gang at that point.
I think it was Joe Rogan first. Unfortunately, I guess. But it was soon after was Sam Harris, and I just dug. I dove deep
Went
down
down the rabbit hole.
into the rabbit hole and was. I mean, for like a month, I was completely obsessed with just watching everything I could possibly see, and I roped my fiance into this whole thing because on one of I don't remember which interview it was, but Yang was talking about permaculture, and the two of us are really into that. So I was like, I'm sold. Who else would there be to vote for in this
What's
life?
permaculture?
Permaculture is a way of growing food and food production that works with the way nature works. So you don't use any chemicals or anything. You even the lay of the land, like if there's hills and things, you use the downward inclination of the hill to water your plants. It's like putting everything in a natural state so it can grow in its best way possible by nature.
Yeah,
That's
that sounds
probably
like a
my
good
boyfriend.
idea.
Yeah, my boyfriend's gonna criticize me over that explanation. He's like, "That was that good. You need to fix that." But anyway, um, so that really hooked me, and I was like, "Okay, this is a different kind of candidate." Uh, so all my friends thought I was crazy for being so into him. And then I was trying to find Yang Gang in Maryland. I was starting to get into that, and then I saw there was an application for an IT specialist job in Iowa. And I was like, would I be willing to move to Iowa for this guy?
I don't
And
know about move, but like go there for a week or two.
yeah. Well, at this stage, I'm a mother of a 21-year-old.
Uh-huh.
So like I've done all the growing, like all the stuff that you do when you're raising a family. And now I was like, I can do whatever I want. So I'm like,
Well, it's
it's like
nice to know. It's nice to know motherhood ends at 21. Like I have to tell my mom she's done.
yeah. Well, not everyone's like that. Hopefully. I mean, if you don't have a helicopter mom, you're doing well.
Oh, my mom's
But
great.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I was like, this is a life-changing opportunity. I could really make a difference if I get this job. So my daughter's standing here. She probably just heard me talking about her. So I got the job offer to work for the campaign as an IT associate. forgot what level I was at the time when I started. So I packed up my stuff, moved to New York area. Actually lived in New Jersey and commuted into New York, and did started that job in November, and then the campaign suspended in what, February.
Yeah, fair.
So yeah, it was quite a quick journey. It was very quick. Uh, but that's my origin story of how I found Yang and how I became part of the campaign. It was definitely a life-changing experience working with some really cool people in New York. It was a unique experience. The pressure of making sure that IT was on point was real because I was like I was always thinking after Iowa we have to really beef up our shit because that means he's blowing up. But I didn't think he
Mhm.
was going to blow up the other way. so, but it happened. And the end of the campaign was pretty tough. It was a tough time period. It's very
Can't
sad.
imagine personally working on it. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah. I
was tough.
mean, yeah, it was very sad. We had to offboard everyone in the campaign. So we went from, like 290 some odd people to 24 in a very short time period. And that was very painful just from a perspective of being a human being and watching people having to lose their positions. And yeah, it was just very sad time for everyone. It seems like so long ago, but yet just yesterday. I don't know. I
It's
mean,
not too long. It's been a couple months.
yeah, that feels like an eternity ago because that was,
So,
I don't,
so how do you become one of the 24? One of those 24 people to stay on? Like, what
you
was
know,
that interim period like? Was chaos like a ladder, or was?
basically the last of us that were left, it was the operations department. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? We're the ones shutting everything down and closing out accounts and such. So it was mostly that. I remember when Zach came back to the office. Can you hold on one second? I gotta tell my family that I'm actually on a podcast.
Yeah, no problem. Breaking can edit this out.
Hey, you're loud and I'm trying to do a video. Love you guys so much. Okay, let's see if that helps. I'm like
Works
so
for 10 minutes.
distracted. I'm so distracted. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so 24 down to 24. It was mostly operations that was left. And I remember when Zach came back to the office because he was on the trail. I actually hadn't met Zach until he came
Oh, that's
back
nice.
from campaigning with Andrew, and it was it was a really we all were like, what just happened? It just felt like we were all in like, what just happened? We were just like all pushing so hard. And how do you transfer into like, we're done? like it's such a crazy thing from going through, I mean, every day on the grind to, okay, what are we going to do now? But my first meeting of the first time I actually met Andrew was in New Hampshire. I was sent out to Iowa first to go get things ready for when the leadership was going to go out there for the Iowa caucus. I had to go out and make sure all the internet was functioning and things like that. And then I had to do the same thing in New Hampshire. So I went up to New Hampshire and met all the team up there. A lot of great, fun people in both locations. And Andrew was doing a talk at a high school, and I was all fangirled out. I had on one of his t-shirts, like one of our, like, I had on a Vote Yang t-shirt, and I was like, wow, this is weird. I'm his employee, and I'm walking up to him wearing fangirl stuff. What? Anyway, I waited till the line died down afterwards, and one of my coworkers introduced me to him directly, and that was pretty cool. I feel like I relate to him on the level of being both Generation X we're both Gen Xers, and I really feel like he talks to me in that way, like we're the same generation and we understand each other in that way. So I said something about that and laughed awkwardly, and we took pictures, and he found
Nicely
out I
done.
was doing IT, and yeah. It was cool. It was whatever, it's cool. But that was a good meeting. And then I met him again when all of the campaigning was done, and he came to the office, and he sat down and said, "Oh," just a little debriefing over things. And then we started standing up Humanity Forward. It officially opened for business March 6th, I believe. And Zach was just trying to figure out who was going to come on staff and who was ready to be done and such. And I was pretty new to being on the campaign, so I was not nearly ready to be done, not even close. And I gave him my background. So my background's kind of funny. I went to school
Well,
for
sure.
art education. I wanted to be an art teacher. That's my 4-year degree is in. And uh I am now working for Humanity Forward. Like that, like the transitions, a lot of information between there. Um, so I'm an artist who was really good at IT work. I worked for a nonprofit in DC called the Appraisal Foundation for like 16 years and got my skill set there in IT for the most part. I started out as the receptionist. I was like, I did some substitute teaching in Baltimore City, and I was like, I don't know if I want to teach. This sucks. It's really hard to work with kids that are, school is not really for education. It was more for babysitting. I really struggled with that whole concept. So I went to just go look for a job anywhere, and I got a job as the receptionist at this company. And I got sick of waiting for the IT people, so I just learned to do it myself. I know that sounds so nuts, but that's what
No,
I
that sounds like
did.
the proper way to handle things.
I was like, this guy takes forever. I'm just going to do it myself. So, I would hover around whenever the IT people came, and then I just got so good at it that I didn't need to call them so much. And they sent me to classes. I learned, and I became the IT coordinator for that company and moved up a little bit throughout the ranks. And
Whoever the IT manager was before that must have been real
they didn't
real.
have one.
They didn't have one.
No, they didn't have one. So I just stepped in and took that. And instead of calling the IT consultant company, I just started doing it myself. And then IT is an interesting field. It kind of just covers anything that plugs in. Like people tend to think you can do anything electronic, like sound checking. Not good at that.
That's my
um,
understanding of technology. So.
yeah, right. So, but I was really good and proficient at um, figuring out what people needed for their technology and making it work for them, whether it be document processing, creating databases, etc. So when I came onto the campaign, that seemed to be a good fit. We don't know what we need. Can you figure out what we need? Let's make that need happen. Um, yeah, it was a good fit. I really enjoyed. I worked. Mike McDonough and I were the two IT people there at the time. We went through some changeover in our leadership, so I got moved up to IT manager, and then it was a really great experience. And I guess when Zach met me, I gave him the spiel of my history of being in nonprofits and working. I'm a people person. I'm very outgoing, and I'm a very process oriented. I've done payroll. I've done all kinds of things in my career. So yeah, he brought me on, and I took on the operations immediately. And then we were talking about who's going to work with the Yang Gang. I was like, you know what? I think that would be a good fit for me, so I want to do it. And here I am. Getting to know. I always feel like everyone's like, "Who is this chick? Like, where'd she come from? Like, out of nowhere,
Well, we're still in the
But I'm one
very
of
early
you.
period.
Yeah, I think of myself as being, ultimately Yang Gang that was fortunate enough to get into the company. Like,
Yeah, you made it.
I made
Dream.
it. Yeah, it was all, happenstance. It's just the universe unfolded for me. I don't quite understand how it happened, but here I am, and I'm so thankful for it. We just had a, a session with Andrew yesterday, one of our first strategy meetings overall. I know it sounds like I feel like saying
Some
that was one of
strategy
our.
would be really helpful, I must say.
Yes. Well, COVID has really thrown off a lot of what we were planning
It
on
has.
doing.
So that's kind of. I was wondering, what's all your guys' active projects right now? We can start with the COVID stuff first.
Yeah. So right now we're working on getting money into the hands of people that need it that are suffering with the COVID crisis.
Thank you for
We've
that. I got my 230 yesterday.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad you were.
Yeah,
I'm so
would have
happy that we can.
would have
That
preferred to
you're.
keep my job and my nice college job. That would have been great.
I know.
I hear the story.
I'm so glad that we could help people that are in need, just like you. You're actually the first person in
Oh,
person that
really?
I've talked to. Some of other people have because we've done a few, like the what was it? Storytelling, dear world. We had
Mhm.
some people that were recipients on there, but yeah, it's a big thing. It's hard to give people money directly in large
It is.
quantities. It's
We need
really
more COVID
hard.
callers, guys. Anyone
Yeah,
that's listening
yeah,
can sign
and
up.
the calling is really important. Not just from the perspective of the mechanics of getting the money to people, but from human beings getting a touch from another human being during a really difficult time. People really appreciate the phone call. I would love it if we had more people that were on to do the calling. It's really a big, important aspect of helping people with their mental health getting through this. Um, the stories are heartbreaking, but you know, just being lending an ear to listen is what you're doing a lot if you're doing that. Yes, it helps us to verify information and such, but I think it's just more important to have the human touch. So that's a big thing that we're working on. And getting Jack Dorsey's money actually doubled the number of applicants that we have in house, which is um,
Well, that's a good boost.
I don't. Yeah, it's a good boost that people need help. Hopefully, it'll inspire us to get more donations so we can give more out. Yeah. So, in addition to that, we're doing a UBI trial in South Carolina. That's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
saw you giving two
exciting.
people a freedom dividend. That's always
Yeah,
good.
yeah. We're doing a little bit of that there. We've got UBI trials going on in upstate New York. We're working on some data as a property right initiatives. The podcast is a big ask on time for some of the staff. We're standing up our C3, which is the the charitable side of Humanity
Hmm.
Forward. The one that we've been using is a C4, which allows us to do more political work. The
Yeah, yeah.
C3 is,
Arizona's a C4 right now.
yeah, exactly. And you guys, great! I'm so excited about you standing up the chapter and all. That's just phenomenal, and I want to talk more about that in a minute. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, we also. What else can I tell you about that we're working on?
What's your
Um,
guys' kind of structure going forward? So we can get into
yeah,
chapterhood because I'm that's an ever present question for everyone that's in the
yeah,
movement right now.
yeah.
So
I wish it
so
was
what
an
do you?
easy answer.
I know it's a difficult answer, but like perfect world, how would you like it set up? Like if you were God and you could
if
just put everything in place.
if I could just take my little pixie
Yes,
wand and make things
yes, that
happen
would
the way
be.
I want, I would love to see chapters pop up throughout the country, small and large, that are under the Humanity First movement, because I think that you guys have way more bandwidth to manage intake of new chapters than we do. and that we can offer our financial support and, media support, if you will, and just public exposure as much as possible to what's going on in the grassroots. Originally, before Humanity First movement formed, can you hold on 1 second? I'm so sorry. Teus, I can hear you. Can you go in another room for a minute? I'm sorry. I love you. This is the best room for lighting for me. And these guys are so awesome. I just want to make sure I'm not distracted. Okay. I'm so sorry.
I'm going to use this for promotional material, though, right?
Teus! No, if you want to leave it in, it's fine. It's who I am. So, where was I? We're talking about structuring out the chapters.
Yeah. So you said humanity. You want us to build our own chapters out throughout Humanity First movement, and you guys ask for financial and media support. That's where you left off.
Yeah, a lot of support nationally from us, and and of course, whatever you guys need, we're gonna want to support. So, I think the biggest thing with chapters, what the difficulty with all of this is, combining the information for what we consider membership and volunteerism, like, into a central location. All the data and information of who's in what group and where that group is, how many people are included in there, and where the numbers are. That's where I feel like we need to focus our attention so that we can start figuring out what we need to do to build out the infrastructure, right? So there is a team that I know that Humanity First movement has working on building out a platform for us to become the coolest organized organization there is. Like, I want this
factors appreciated.
Yes. I mean, I want us to outdo what Bernie's camp did with their tech. Like,
Bernie's revolution was quite amazing, looking at it as a social movement with the fundraising they were able to accomplish, combined with the 50-state attack. But they still lost, and they still lost decisively.
Yes. And
what's your guys' takes on this? Because we are setting up another movement like he is. It might not be the same Bernie-esque vision of a movement, but still. So what are we going to do differently that they didn't accomplish with like $300 million in 4 years?
I guess it's not the money, is it? I don't think it's the money that's going to get us. I think one of the things that we have that they didn't have is Humanity First. I really think that our whole campaign around a Humanity First movement and, putting human beings above everything else is really a message worth building out. And I also think it also allows us to do more than just all the campaign style of stuff. Like, this is my vision, is that we become a commonplace in the community. Like, Humanity First movement and Humanity Forward, we're going to be doing things like Pledge for Humanity. Remember when we did that? I would like to see more of that, where we're
cleaned up a park.
Yeah, like, that's organizing those kinds of things where regular public can just come and be a part of, and they get to see that we're doing things that are benefiting society in the local level.
My boss wants to make a community center. Humanity Forward Community Center.
Exactly. Where you can rent out space or have people come in and do things.
Classes or
exactly. Exactly. It can't just be political. We have to give people what they need in their everyday lives. I mean, my fiance is like dying to start community gardens around the country. Like, that's like something that he's would be down
Passionate,
for and
passionate for.
very passionate about, and beg me to that he be the spearhead for that. And stuff like that. I really feel like we have the time to put in roots with the communities at a very local level. It's kind of like Venture for America. He was taking very educated young folks that are fresh out of college and putting them in startups around the country that needed whatever
Talent.
what talent in that specific area, and building things in that way. And not only did that help the economy or the interest
Community.
community in for that particular spot, but it brought his message there as well. And that's what we need to do. We need to start making it seem like it's just part of everyday life that UBI can come. Instead of it being such like a drive and push, we're going to slam it into people. I feel like that's what Bernie's group did, and it didn't work because they were angry, they were pushy. I just feel like we could have a better tone than that, and it be more normal. Like, you've got to mainstream what we're doing and show people that this is the future and give it to them. Like, instead of just telling them what the future is, we need to show it to them. Even locally, like doing food drives, setting up food banks. I mean, the world has changed because of COVID, and we should fill in the holes where that is. If we could just keep getting money from large donors like Jack Dorsey and filtering it down to the local level so that we can do programs like that, I would be thrilled. It has to be beyond just the political scope.
So
So
this
anyway,
this might be a tough question, but
bring it on.
corporate philanthropy has largely been kind of a PR stunt for a lot of these affluent individuals. It's just financing community projects, yet they take away so much wealth from our system. It's like they're dropping a little bit in the bucket and taking the whole thing out back. So, is all this corporate philanthropy what we need for the Humanity Forward movement or Humanity First movement? And if so, how do we isolate ourselves from the corrosive factors corporate philanthropy usually comes with?
Yeah, that is a tough question because it's hard to. The reason why it's a tough question is because, there's the whole idea of we've got to get in the system to change the system, right? Like, how do you change the system if you're not a part of the system? It's very hard to change it from the outside without just ripping the whole thing down and burning it, which may be happening right now.
That's a little pointed.
I mean, the virus is burning the country down in some ways. Like, all of our systems are proving to be very weak and vulnerable. But that is how people, the majority of people are not aware that the system works this way, right? I mean, most people aren't even thinking about like, oh, the corporate interests and then to take over everything. They're not thinking about that. They're just thinking about, how do I get my kids back to school? How do I, pay for my groceries if we only have one salary coming into the house? They're not thinking about things on the level that most of us diehard core Yang Gang folks are thinking about it. So, it's really hard for people to respond to change without it coming from what they recognize. Mm-hmm. Don't you think? I mean, it's like
it's very interesting because obviously no one that's currently almost no one currently in the Yang Gang right now learned about us through the traditional media platforms. It was new media, it was new ventures, new platforms that reached all of us.
Yeah.
The question is, are we it in terms of that new age Yang Gang? Did we reach everyone that's receptive to our message on these platforms? If the answer is yes, then we need to go to old media and can get people from there. but the answer is no, then we can start keep building up people from the outside.
It,
It's a challenging question, right? Because we need financing for this movement. Obviously, our fundraising numbers at the end of the campaign were already reducing. The yen gain was taxed. Like we were pretty much at our financial limits to support the movement. So we can't do it ourselves. So we do
no,
need these outside money, but the question is there any way we can take it but still be
not sell our souls.
yeah, like people will accuse anyone of being a grifter or selling out to the institutions. Like I don't care about people saying that. I care about if it's true or not. So like, do we need to make the every conversation between a donor and Yang like public? Like nothing Jack says to Andrew can never be private, or else we just lack trust. Like that's a radical one, or like, and
Yeah.
not an actual idea, but it's like, how do we make sure? How do we get people to know, like, hey, this money isn't coming with political strings or corporate strings?
I mean, is that even like completely realistic?
I don't know.
I, I
Probably what I said not isn't, and 100% probably isn't. But is there
yeah,
nothing more we could do than
I
take
mean,
our word? I'm not accusing you guys at all. It's more like a future.
no, this is a great conversation to be had because it's a turnoff for so many of us, the whole corporate interests, coming in and using their money to change elections. It's very annoying. But at the same time, we needed $40 million for Andrew to compete. I mean, there's no way around that. And I feel like there's always the risk of, you play the game so hard and then you realize that you are the game. Like, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like there's always that risk, but the nature of what we're trying to accomplish is the opposite of how we have to get to it. It's such a juxtaposition. I mean, the whole political, I was so about to check out. I was really, I just remember when we started this, I was like, what are we, I mean, Joe Biden is probably the only one that's going to be able to beat Trump. That was the first thing and here we are with Joe freaking Biden.
Yeah, after the most combative primary
Ever.
in
And we ended up with who everyone thought was going to be it anyway. It's so strange. But back to the question about money in politics, it's just, I don't know how we could possibly be competitive without playing the game that's before us. And, we have to trust that Andrew's whole prospect of what he's been doing and showing us and talking to us about is real. And that's not going to change just because he has to play the game. He has to play the game.
Yeah, if you're interested in hearing a little bit about Humanity Ford, Arizona, it seemed like we were going to have
Yes.
this conversation about chapterhood. So
Yeah.
let's have you lead. Any questions do you have about how the
Yeah. I want to
local
know
movement?
how you guys decided that you wanted to become a chapter, and like was everyone all on the same page? What were some of the arguments for and against it that was going on?
So Arizona was a little interesting because we had we have our leader, our boss, Brendan Carpenter. You worked with him on the interim board.
Yeah,
So
it's great.
he was kind of this leader for us that Andrew was for the rest of the Yin Gang. He really motivated us to keep moving forward, especially after the campaign ended. He reached out to the regional organizers in the state and said, "Hey, I've had some signals from the national campaign that they are heading towards a nonprofit like system. Let's get on this with them." And not everyone did. Some people needed a break, which was totally reasonable. Some people were only interested in the political campaigning part, not the profit part. Perfectly reasonable. But those who did decide it was something they wanted to do, we kind of went out like, all right, what do we need for this to be accomplished? our vice president Ron Russell, he he led, and Brian Calloway, our political director, he led the way in drafting our bylaws to become a 501c4. Myself as comms director, I continue developing our outreach strategy and how and recruitment and how are we going to be actually effective in doing what we want. While Brendan he put almost all of his time in the national movement because it's just helping humanity first movement build up. So then comes 420. We sign our charter on 420. Yes, that was on
Was
purpose
that
for anyone.
intentional?
That was
Okay.
very. We waited a week. We could have been active a week before, but we decided to wait.
It's an
But
unforgettable date.
it was fun. It was a fun day.
It's nice.
So we charter, and it was really, we had faith that you guys, Humanity Forward, would come back with us with a vision, and you guys didn't disappoint. You guys delivered, and Humanity First movement got off got off its got off the ground, and it started to be able to do more outreach work. And I really pushed our team in saying like, hey, if we're first, we can lead the way. We can help people develop it rather than be behind. So that really motivated us to work quickly. And like we did that with a lot of things. Like we have a lot of what's it called, projects in
Hmm.
line for you guys to propose at Humanity Forward and Humanity First movement whenever they decide that process opens back up. And
Yeah.
we have ideas like that community center Brendan wanted to do. We have the initiatives like a deep canvassing, that's a political effort that he's
Yeah.
interested in developing. We have this podcast where we wish to kind of restructure how communications between the grassroots and leadership work, get people like you guys on direct to just tell us like, hey, this is what we're doing, and then get people on from our side to yell at you because that's what
That's
leadership's about.
it
Yeah.
is. It is.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's kind of how Arizona
that's
did it.
that's great. And what's your membership like? What's your
So
numbers?
so we have a lot of different cat classes of members right now. So we have our just super active members. I have a team of 9 people that works under me with the communications team that are highly active. So we have that strong base of support. And then we have our leadership board with our rounding out our positions like legal, volunteering, VP, president, those people like that. And then we have a couple other volunteers that we put in that super volunteer role that doesn't have a formal job but is still doing a lot of work. And then we have just our supporters. Those are around 100 people that are actively monitoring our progress, pitching in, interacting with us on our Facebook pages and our volunteer efforts. And then we have scattered support across Facebook and our email and Twitter, and it's all very disorganized, but we're reining in the
It
reins.
sounds common.
Yeah,
It sounds
it's
very
a,
common. That's You want people to be able to come into your organization where they are. So you don't want them to be turned off because they have to be at a certain level. So you provide
mhm.
different membership levels, and it seems like you've done that. Um,
Yeah, like the biggest thing is not to dissuade anyone. Like
mhm.
even if they just want to monitor our progress, we don't want to dissuade that in any way because that's a future volunteer that we could harvest instead of if we don't like just bash them over the head with
Yeah,
fundraising requests and like, hey, go call 20 people for COVID right now. Like
yeah,
we definitely don't want to increase our burnout on that
yes.
front.
No, that makes sense. You have to be careful with that. Do you have dues? Does your membership have a due structure?
We do have dues. We haven't collected yet, but we voted to $50 dues for members. We've offered people like $1,000 one time payment for our
Yeah,
membership.
lifetime membership.
Yeah.
That's
So we do
nice.
have some dues in place. That was a contentious conversation. I remember I was
Yeah.
on the no side of the fence, being a student and not having much money myself. I was like, what? I already donated so much to Andrew Yang. I don't want to I don't want to keep.
Right.
I
Yeah.
got on this campaign to get $12,000, not.
Right, right, right. Well, that is a challenge. That is a challenge, and that's why when I was formulating the structure, I wanted it to be. It doesn't matter how much you pay; you still get the same level of membership benefits,
Yeah, but then
even
what's
if,
the incentive, right? What's the
uh,
incentive to have that different classes of membership, or to be?
or
It's
like
just,
if you
it's
don't
just a
have to pay,
problem.
I'm not going to pay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That what's going to dissuade that? That's fine. That I kind of look at it like it'll work out because there's going to be people that have the money and they'll see the need and they'll want to put it in. I actually wanted to go a step further and for people to dedicate their membership to a specific program. Like say you wanted to all of your money or 50% of it or whatever some percentage of your dues to go towards COVID relief or something. And then you actually are it's almost like a donation, but it also gives you membership perks, you know?
Mhm.
I don't know. It's a really tough conversation because there's so many different models, and at some point, I'm going to have to make a decision. So I'm still gathering information from organizations like yours. Just curious how your team feels about, um, like how this forming it has changed the dynamics among you from before you formed. Has there been a change? Is it more inspiring? Is it feel like more work? Is it like what's it like?
So it's an interesting question. So we definitely slowed down because we transitioned to this mentality that it's now a marathon and not a sprint. Because for the first couple months after Andrew suspended, we were still in campaign mode. Like we still wanted to go fast. Arizona never gets any love in elections. You guys never came to visit us.
Oh.
Super tragic. So we didn't get all the the parades and everything like that. So we were so ready to go. And that was tough for those couple months because we wanted to move fast, and we certain teams were able to move fast. Like my team, comms, it's pretty easy to move fast because just the
Yeah.
nature of the work. But it's not like the bylaws can move any faster than a person can write them.
No.
We took a while to develop a lot of arguing and conversations about how to do that right. But then we chartered, and then it was kind of like, all right, we're an actual nonprofit, a legal nonprofit. We have to plan for the long game. So we kind of just like, all right, where do we focus on first? We picked a few projects. Each department picked a few projects. Like we Andrew endorsed Suzanne Hugs. She's our candidate in LD 25 in Mesa. So our political division, we're focusing on helping her. Like we'll just help her with what she needs. And then the comms team, all right, we're focused on making this podcast, making it good for people, so they have we provide another service towards them, build more community.
Yeah.
Like, and then Brendan was focused on, all right, Humanity Forward wants us to create a community project. What does deep canvassing look like for a community, or what does this community center look like for, or something like that. So we really narrowed our focus, and are really waiting for a lot of clarity from Humanity Forward and the Humanity First movement to give us. I think in the beginning of the conversation we were talking a little bit about strategy.
Yeah.
A strategy would be great. That's probably my number one thing was, I think a lot of people would like some clarity in our direction, because before COVID, it seemed like we were building this Sanders-esque revolution plus political machine that helped propel us 2022, 2024. But then everyone had to shift to COVID. So
Yeah.
now it's like it seems like we're a charity organization, which is great, but it's not what a lot of people signed up for in the
No.
beginning. So some clarity in our political direction would probably be my biggest ask from Humanity Forward. And
That's
Andrew said something really interesting in a podcast with Trumpers for Yang.
uh-huh. I
He
haven't
said
watched that yet. That's on my
it was good.
list.
It was good. I really like when he talks to conservatives, because I feel like we could do really well outreaching to them. But he said politicians work like marketers or something like that. He said politicians send signals with what they do. So that got me thinking. Well, Andrew's a politician now. What kind of signals is he sending with all the COVID relief, with all the media blitz he's doing, with getting involved in the Asian American discrimination, what's going on right now. So I was trying to figure out what's your guys' trying to vision. I must admit, it is very sporadic, and I couldn't figure it out. A common theme besides increasing Andrew's brand, which might be all that's required right now. But what's kind of so if you can elaborate a little bit on our political direction, if you have any knowledge on it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not wrong with improving Andrew's brand. I mean, he came out of nowhere, so that's kind of an important thing to do, is to grow the trust of who he is and that his word can be trusted in the larger national realm. We already know why we follow him. So I think politically right now we're building that out, that Andrew can be trusted, that Andrew has the answers. Andrew is, Yang knows where the future was going and it just came 10 years sooner. Like we're just capitalizing on that. I think. Now I always have to state that these are things that I have from observation less than conversation about it specifically. I mean, internally, we're just trying to help people because this crisis sucks for so many. And but as we pivot away from COVID and back to our initiatives, we want to prove that UBI works. You know, that's where we're going to go probably next with all of the UBI trials that we're working on. And in terms of grassroots, we've got to agitate Congress because, I mean, this emergency UBI is a perfect platform to agitate Congress. I mean, Nancy Pelosi mentioned UBI. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So strategy is to agitate Congress, COVID relief, and endorsements, supporting the candidates that are running right now. I forgot to mention that earlier, that endorsements is a big thing in the office. It's a really big deal of getting that all squared away. And Conrad, who is Yang's scheduler and primary contact for endorsements, he's working so hard with that. So we've come out with some really good endorsements that needs broad support. People's money and time, and putting it out there that these candidates are legit and real. Like, I was so excited that let's see if I can say his name right.
Oh boy, it's always a
Russ
challenge.
Russ Cercioni. He's from New Jersey, and he just was endorsed yesterday. It was kind of exciting because I'm in New Jersey, and I was like,
Oh, cool.
I felt responsible to tweet out that happened.
It's great when you have your own local candidate that's
Yeah,
endorsed.
it really does help you with motivation, and the more we have of those, the better.
So when
So
the
the
candidate
strategy.
gets, oh, I'm sorry, continue.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to change topics, but if you had a last
Yeah, I
thought.
was just gonna say my last thought on strategy is, because we're not campaigning, it is going to be a slower pace, and it is going to seem a little less um, pointed and focused because there is a broader
Plan.
objective. Yeah, there's a much broader objective of just getting a more human-centered society, and we have to start somewhere. So, and we want to make sure Andrew stays in the news. We have to make sure he stays there because he's our voice,
Well, you guys have been doing a great job of that.
Yeah.
Like he's
He does it
I,
himself most of the time, but yeah.
he's getting good at the media game. So I keep since it's kind of my department to keep track of how he is in the news. There's been
Yeah.
like an explosion of or organic content coming from Andrew's world,
Yeah,
and
it's
that would
pretty
have been
good.
great. Would have been great 4 months ago.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? But, COVID is the reason. It's unfortunate, but COVID has a lot to do with that.
Yeah. So speaking of COVID, you mentioned how it inc- de- you mentioned how quickly UBI gained during COVID crisis.
Yeah.
And has there been any thought that could be a negative? Is it
Yeah.
it seems like we're not prepared to actually have this fight right now.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because in the back of my mind, I've been thinking that I'm like, man, am I a little pissed because UBI is like a thing right now because we didn't get a chance to really like plan for it and just kind of like plop, here it is. Um, I think there is a potential that it could be like not taken, just losing the momentum of something, like it's come in real fast and then it drizzles off, like that is a concern for me. I don't know if that's like a legitimate concern, but I have that thought. um I was literally a little like, oh great, it takes a virus to make everybody want to listen to what we're talking about, and I just, I hope that that's not the case. I think the more um, that people are not going to be able to go back to work the way they did, the way they had worked before, is going to open people's minds to the idea. I don't know if they'll be convinced completely, but at least open people's minds to the idea. And that's, we have to run with that. We have to deal with what we've been given.
Well, yeah, that's certainly not turning back the clock. Like
No.
the gains were made.
Yeah, we just have to step up to the plate and get our act together so that we can capitalize on this.
In terms of communication, what can we do about getting breaking news from you guys, Manny Forward, to the nodes in our social network, the people that with the platforms in the Yang
Yeah.
Gang before it releases, because
Well, we've
it's essential we get that done or get this line of communication open. In my mind,
Yeah. Oh, I would agree that there was some difficulties in the beginning because we didn't have anything in infrastructure in place. We didn't know who to contact. I mean, this is all new to me, right? Like
hmm.
who's who in the Yang Gang. I know that, the larger names and such, but to know who's doing the actual work in the background, it took a little bit of time to figure out how do we get back for example, the Facebook base camp, like, like who's
I
running
remember you
that?
guys doing that.
What's happening? Where is everyone right now? We had to go through a period of figuring out where everyone was and who, because we didn't have the staff anymore that we had during the campaign that knew who was who. So there was all of those growing pains of starting a company and not having any infrastructure in place. But now, with Shelby Summerfield coming back on from the campaign, she was our SCAD, advanced team leader. She's looking at where we need the most um, thought and consideration for improving a process. She's looking at all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we just didn't have the team in place at first. Now we do. We have connections now with certain social media avenues, and we're streamlining how we give information to HFM and how they give information to us, because there's a lot going on, even though it feels like there's not as much going on, but it's the campaign, but there is a lot of infrastructure happening. So yeah, I think becoming aware of where there were bottlenecks, and then just correcting. We just keep doing that over and over again. I think it's better than it was a month ago. It has room to improve.
Oh,
Uh,
it's definitely improved. Like you guys have been doing a better job of getting us the information.
yeah,
It's just what we need to do is what we really need to do is streamline it and just make sure it's getting to us before we're reacting rather than like
yeah,
planning it, because it's tough
yeah.
on a team if you're just reacting to news all the time.
Right. You'd rather be putting it out instead
Yeah,
of reacting
obviously
to
that's
it.
preferable on our end.
Yeah, no, and honestly, it'd be preferable on our end too. And maybe there's something we can do. I'm hoping, like in the structure that comes forward, is that we have a comms leader that can we go to give that information to, and then that person can disseminate to those that need to know it ahead of time, because it's
Yeah, that works.
that would be ideal, because we can't individually speak to every chapter, if you will, right?
Hmm.
Unless we have like a press release type thing, that would work.
An internal
But
press release that could work too.
yeah, like that could work too. So something to think about. And what's the best way to do it? Because then there's the social media side of it, right? Which Andrew's already plugged into himself.
Hmm.
He's like directly plugged into that. Then there's the IRL aspect of it, where folks like yourself, maybe I don't know how plugged in you are to social media or what teams you're
Too
on in
much.
that.
Too much.
Okay. Like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm so overwhelmed with just getting to know how to tweet right now. It's so funny. I'm like, I've always been sort of like the back end person. Like when, you work in the background and you don't have to worry about what the front end is doing as much. Now I'm the front end and I'm like, oh, I need to tweet more often. I need to be more of a cheerleader myself directly. Like,
I have a
that's
tough.
a whole
I,
other.
I have a tough connection with social media. The first part is I have a minor in digital analytics, which is social media analytics,
Yeah.
basically. And the more I learned about it, the more I grew to dislike it, and what and how the algorithms work, and how the effects, the mental health effects it's having on people.
Yeah.
Like when you know a little bit more about the machine, it's even worse than it's just the face value.
And
But it's
how it
just
can,
very effective.
yeah, it could so I'm always amazed at how things get trended. I'm just like, how does this happen? Like, it's just so amazing to me. The planning well, it's phenomenal how that was done during the campaign and even after. What was the last thing that trended?
shake,
Bail out
shake up Congress, and then there's
Yeah, bail
Congress
out the
past UBI,
people. Yeah,
Yang
yeah,
for Congress. We
yeah.
still
All
have
of
that capability. That's good.
yeah, we still have it. I'm so grateful for the people that are passionate about this whole thing, because without them, you know, where would we be? There's just so much um energy that needs to be directed and put, you know, it's already focused for the most part. That we all know what we want. We want a better society, but we have initiatives that need to be pushed. And I mean, we're still building out our website. We're about to redo the website already because we just had to get something up as fast as possible. And now, we have the bandwidth to really think about how we're going to make it pretty cool. So yeah, communications is really important, and we're always going to be updating and making it better. And any suggestions you have, we are open to.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's one of the things about you guys that I enjoyed the most is how open you are to ideas, which I think are especially important.
Yeah,
Especially because during the campaign, I not no offense to Andrew and his team, but a lot of like the most memorable Yang game moments, like the math and our name, they came from the grassroots. And the more
hmm
that we can inspire that, the better we'll be.
I think
Everything
so.
everything should be bottom up as much as whenever we can. It's usually been the most effective.
Successful. Yeah, it's most effective and successful. So we have to re-engage those that probably stepped away after the suspension, right? We got to get
Hmm.
those folks back on board. And then once they come back on board, we've got to get everybody on the same page with what we're trying to accomplish. And then after we figure that out, we've got to go spread the message to those that have yet to hear it.
Hmm.
um, we can do all three of those things at once. Um, I don't think it's like exclusive. I think once you start re-engaging those that have disengaged, it kind of just naturally starts to want to spread. But we've got to get out of our own bubble. I sometimes look around and I'm like, oh, there's so much yang gang. I love it. And then I'm like, how do we get new yang gang? We need new
Hmm.
people and to and it has to be done in ways. So the Yang Gang has a personality, right? It's and I feel like it's a little bit of a spin-off of Andrew's personality to a certain degree, like that intellectually nerdy, uh very thoughtful and intelligent folks, right?
There's a
And
D&D group in our HFAZ.
what is it? Say that again.
Dungeons. There's a Dungeons and Dragons group at Humanity
Yes.
Fort, Arizona.
Yes.
Suzanne plays with our VP, and Brendan plays, and
Yeah, well, see, that's what I mean. I mean, when I was talking to Andrew once, and he was asking me what my favorite movies were, and I was like, well, it's The Matrix is like top up there of one of my and so we were going through all these things, and I was like, you know, people that I know from working in DC and such, that's not their favorite movie. You know, that's they're probably more like, I don't know, Hangover, or like, I don't know, something
really.
less intellectual and, heady and math oriented. So we have to attract people that are not attracted to the same things we're attracted to.
What
Um,
do you think? How do you think we do that? Like, how do we connect to people that's not driven by the math censored policies we are? Because that's also a
yeah,
bottleneck. Like,
it is.
is this it? Is the math brand compatible to only these people in America, or
I
like that'd
think
be a
that
bottleneck that we need?
I mean, if I was going to go back to my 80s roots and look at things like the Breakfast Club and how they had the different character, I don't know if you ever saw the Breakfast Club. Have you? I mean,
Yeah, I've seen it
no.
once.
Yeah. If you go into
I've
all
seen
the
it.
different characters of people that are in that, we know that the chick that made snowflakes with her dandruff would be on our side. We know the main character would be, but would we be able to get Judd in there? I don't know. And then there's the Molly Ringwald character. We need to. I hate to say it, but there is personality that nails hair. People are freaked out because they can't get their hair done or dyed and their nails done during
So
COVID. That is not an
I
issue. That's
don't
not an
mind.
issue for me, like, that was not a thing for me. I already have exited that realm a long time ago. But yeah, we have to sort of be appealing in message somehow that's broader than just the math. I hate to say it, but it makes sense for us because that's what we're attracted to and we're the early adopters. But we have to show them how it will help them in their lives. It always has to be about that.
In terms
It's
of
a
the
tough
humanity, yeah, in terms of the humanity first movement, what direction do you want to see them moving at, and what have they been doing well that you especially proud of?
Oh, there's so much that they've been doing well.
Well, that's good to hear.
They've been trying to figure out how to do organization outside of a typical um, top-down structure, which
Yeah,
I
sociocracy.
yeah, totally admirable. How patient and considerate of everyone's needs that they've been through that whole process. It's tough. It's really hard to shift the paradigm from being a top down to sociocratic. I don't even know what, I'm still learning
It
about it myself.
it is ambitious, I must say.
Very
Clark
ambitious.
Clark
And
Forrester is his name. He's leading that.
I'm
Uh,
sorry, you were breaking up a little.
Clark Forrester, is leading that
Yeah,
sociocracy charge. That's right.
yeah. And Nicholas
Well,
and
why not?
Massey. It's just yeah, it's really cool what they're working on in building out organizational structure. And I think it's so on par with what human-centered society could look like. And I'm very proud of the efforts that they're putting into that. If I it does slow things down a bit because of, you're introducing new structures that people aren't familiar with. So you have to talk through the details of how it can work for everyone. Like, you can't just make a singular decision. It's got to be group involved, and that hive mindset is nothing how Humanity Forward functions. Okay. We're definitely a top-down organization, but we have a lot of collaboration and input. I'm not saying that we're like Andrew's our overlord. It's not like that at all. It's very collaborative, but it's definitely a top-down. Like, we are responding to his rapid initiatives and things like that. But yeah, Humanity First movement is under a different idea, and I think it's people are going to have papers written on it because it's very unique, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about how considerate the movement is. It's just so kind. I mean, the Humanity First there's nowhere else in politics like it. There's just nothing. There really isn't, and I just can't wait for that to broaden out to the mainstream, because that's what we have to do. We have to mainstream all these things.
That would be helpful. I remember when I was campaigning in Iowa, talking to the other campaign staff. They're kind of shocked on how happy we all were because
Yeah,
they're
they
apparently
were.
campaigning is not a happy experience for most people, but
It's not.
we had a hell of a time. Uh,
It wasn't a good time for a lot of people, but that's campaigns in general, because there's not enough time to do anything, so you can't be as thoughtful as you'd want to be. Everything's so fast.
so where do you think Humanity First movement needs to move a little bit faster in, or what's something you think they would be helpful on your end if they developed? Like,
I
where's
think
the
the
area
fact
of need?
right now, if we could just what we're working on is getting clarity on how our relationship works. It's kind of a new thing that your volunteer network is now its own thing. And how does that work? Like, we were talking about, how do we put that on the website the other day? Like, do we just send people straight to Humanity First movement? Do we have our own stuff but it links to theirs? How, like, it's just so, the faster that we can settle on and get aligned with how we do our relationship, the better. And I think that would be for both ends, but I understand that that can't really be rushed either. So, um, uh, I mean, they're doing a fantastic job of getting the Slack back together and organizing it and figuring out how to make it more usable. And but I mean, 20,000 people are on there. Every
Yeah,
time I look at that
not nothing.
number, yeah, it's not nothing. It's a lot of people on there. So, but I think, like, that in and of itself, once we get that over that hurdle, which I welcome, is we'll have so much more clarity on the next step, which is building out the platform for collecting data on who's in the movement.
All right, I want you to give us an exclusive. What's a story with Andrew that you haven't told anyone about yet?
I'm a blabbermouth. I don't know if there is such a
You know,
thing. Let me think.
that is true. All right, your best one can work too as well.
My best. Oh wait, you're agreeing that I'm a blabbermouth?
Yeah. I've watched the interim board meeting videos. Like, you're saying
Oh
some
my
things that you
god,
don't need to be saying.
it is really hard for me to keep my mouth shut. Seriously. I often wonder, should I pass those links around at all? No, I'm just kidding. Here I am. I'm doing it again. Let's see. What is something, an inside scoop on Andrew? Uh, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's anything new. He's so genuine. It's hard to even have something that would be
I don't
considered
want to
new.
hear we're following an authentic person. I want to hear the details behind the scenes.
The details behind the scene. I wish I could be there when they're doing the podcast. That would be really
That
cool.
would be fun.
That would be awesome. Um, gosh, that's a really tough one for me. I'm trying to think, like, one of the things, like, I remember when he first came to the office, uh, wearing a hoodie, like, he was incognito for real, trying to get to the office with nobody recognizing him. And I was like, That's so weird to see him like that. Like that was a different look for me to see him that way. And I mean, to see him in his glasses was unique too. Like to see him just like a regular person, just sitting there, just being Andrew normal. I mean, it's hard to say. He's very genuine. What you see is what you get. There's not really much different than what he is publicly. He's always thinking about the next thing. It's really cool to have a boss that has that much clarity on what he wants. He genuinely knows each of us and is curious about you as a person. I mean, it's really hard to have something that's like, I bet you didn't know this. um,
Oh,
yeah,
it's fine if you don't have any
I don't really
inside
have any juice,
information.
man. I'm trying to think. Him and Zach are pretty funny together. But that's on the podcast too. So yeah, we just keep it real over here at Humanity Forward. Just keeping it real.
We need to
Um,
get more people on the humanity hangs because I don't think people quite believe those who have talked to Andrew Yang that it's like, oh, he's just like a normal person. Oh, he'll remember you if you see
he
him. Like,
does.
I know it's
I don't,
freaky.
it's freaky. He just remembers people. Like he's met, I would say, millions of people. And he remembers faces, or at least like, didn't I meet you here? He's so, oh, I don't know, from a
it's
different
it's it's
cloth.
it's great that he remembers all of us. Really, it is touching that he takes the time, but it's amazing that he can do it all. Like,
Yeah, I will say, like, if anyone is worried about like him not having being like anything other than relational with the Yang Gang, it'll never be anything but that. I feel pretty confident in saying that he's always going to be personable and family oriented.
uh, one during my classes this semester, I'm still in college, but
You're
there,
that
there,
young?
I'm 21. I am 21.
Oh, you're my god! Oh my gosh! Okay, that's very cool, and
There-
that's very cool.
one of the texts we read was Thomas Jefferson's critique on democracy. He said democracy can't function at a national level because it's just too big. Like you're not
Yeah,
connected to your people. You're in Washington. It can't work. And that's kind of my same mentality as when leaders go foul. Like when they get detached from their following or the people that the reason they started in the first place. And we kind of went over the issues with corporate philanthropy and kind of the nature of corrosive politics. But I think the biggest solution is if he just stays connected to our internal network and into the Yang game, whatever name they might be.
yeah.
I know there's some discussion about changing it, but whatever network that may be, as long as he's ingrained in that system, I think he'd be fine.
I think so. I think so too. And it's important. He personally stays connected with people in many ways. He's way more accessible than most people in his position. I mean, way more accessible. I mean, for staff, way more accessible. you know? And that's not a bad thing. I kind of like that he's independent as a leader in that way. I think it's healthy for him to stay connected to the grassroots as much as possible. And of course, I'm going to say that because that's my role. you
Well,
know,
we need you to say that every time. We're like,
yeah, I think it's really important for him to stay connected. And anytime it may not seem that way, it is not because of lack of will. It's more about just logistics and optics. If it ever seems like that, there may be something uh, that I mean, there is political strategy that's always involved in what's going on. That you have to be aware of. Like, I'm sure he said it himself in many a podcast. Like, my team doesn't want me to say this, but I'm saying it anyway. Or like, he's said things like that many a times. But he has really good judgment, and being staff to an independent leader can be tough, but we all trust his judgment, and I hope that the Yang Gang and the grassroots can believe that anything he does is mostly and always it's always for the better good of the movement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. What should we change the Yang Gang name to if we're going to change it? If you want, we can start branding the McLeod crowd and
Oh my
get.
gosh. No. My name is so hard for people. It's not a fun name at all. Yang is way more fun than McLeod. I mean, unless you watch The Highlander, no one even knows where McLeod comes from.
Yeah, I
No.
don't know what the Highlander is.
Oh, you don't know the Highlander? Oh my god, Highlander from the Cloud McLeod, Born on the Hills of Lockshire. Sorry, it's a movie, and yeah, you'll have to watch it someday.
I'll check it out. I have
You'll
plenty.
have it's an oldie
Actually,
but goodie.
oh, it's an old one. I don't watch
Yeah,
movies past the 90s.
yeah. It might have been late '80s, but
There we go.
but yeah, no, a new name for the Yang Gang. You can't replace that. There's no replacing that. But we just have to make there be room for people that may not feel as comfortable being labeled that. So I think the Humanity First movement is a good start, like calling themselves instead of calling it Yang Gang movement. Or I mean, this is a movement that goes beyond Andrew, right? Goes beyond Andrew. If
I
something
hope.
happened and Andrew wasn't able to proceed, we would have to proceed. I mean, there's not going to be that, God willing. But I'm just saying, like, if there's any name that would be appropriate, I think Humanity First being in there or Humanity Forward, something or other, they're all. I think they're appropriate. It's not as like cool as saying Yang Gang. Yang Gang. We can't do that. But
I just like watching traditional media say our name on the air.
the Yang Gang is on the scene in Massachusetts. It's just it does sound funny. I'm so used to it. It doesn't sound like anything out of the ordinary to me. But yeah. So, and there is like some people don't like the word gang, and there's some political things around that. Yeah, and we need a little more diversity in our group too. I think we didn't touch on that, but there could be some more. I mean, we're very politically diverse, and I love that. Culturally, we could spread a little more, I think.
So that brings. I went to a LD20 meeting here in Arizona virtually, and the woman who was running for Pima County Recorder was was speaking, and they opened up to a Q&A. Suzanne Hugg was there. It was a bunch of candidates. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Suzanne a question. So I asked like, could we lead our diversity outreach in the Democratic Party by adopting more universal policy that encompasses everybody? Because there's some studies that say more universal programs decrease stigma, and they get increased diversity.
Like,
And she told me that what we should do is have anti-white supremacy training in the Democratic Party, and that kind of struck me as there's just two radically different approaches to increasing diversity in
those are
politics.
radically like very radically opposite, I would say, of
Yeah, that's the exact opposite of what I was
what
thinking.
you were
But
thinking. Yeah.
do we have a problem? Like, I'm not saying we have a white supremacy problem, but do we have a problem with the homogeneity in our group, and that a universe that our policies itself can't solve? Do we need? Is there a specific action we need to be taking to policy wise to outreach to these people, or is it more about just connecting with them and
I
outreaching
think
towards them?
I just watched the video that the Melanated Council of Yang did yesterday. I don't know if you saw
I
that
haven't seen
on.
it yet. I saw that as the thing. I was like,
Yeah.
all right, we're gonna have to
I was
watch
like, "Oh, well I was
this.
like, I have to watch this." And I think the point is that those of us that are melanated, that are in the movement, we see how it will benefit those that look like us, that are black, brown, etc. We understand that universal basic income would change the dynamics if we had had it in the 70s like it was supposed to be for people of color.
That would
There's
have been
no
great.
ifs, ands, or buts about it. And in order to talk to people, you have to talk to them where they are, which a lot of times includes who they are. So we do need to have some form of language to reach out to people that look different than ourselves. I mean, I have to do it every day. And I do think that if we had a message that was specifically tailored to how universal basic income works for Black people, and specifically, I'm saying that because I am, I think that would do wonders for the movement, because right now it's really hard for people to hear math like as a thing if it's not your thing. And I'm not saying that that's a Black person can't hear math. That's not true. We have plenty of people in our movement that are just like me that love we're blurs, we're Black nerds. Okay, there's plenty of us, but what I'm saying is that that's our message has to be changed in some way so that it can be heard. You can't Universal basic income just feels like, oh, you're not thinking about me, you're just thinking about everybody else, which is what's always been happening. Like, you know what I mean? Like that could be the vibe that's taken away. So yes, we need to have a message specifically. I mean, Asian Americans are doing it. Andrew does it all the time. um he speaks specifically to Asian Americans, but he doesn't do it in a way that's like, I'm talking to Asian Americans right now. Like, it's not, it has to be done in a way that doesn't feel like pandering, because that is so
Yeah,
ugly. And
that's
the
my big
Democratic Party
gripe.
makes me sick with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my big gripe with the Democratic Party on their diversity efforts. It's just it seems like it's all there's no substance and it's
It's got to
all
be,
pandering.
yeah, it's got to be both. It's got to be substance, and don't ignore the fact that there's a difference. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Talk to me about how this will help me as this person. And that should just be universal. Like, we should be able to talk to people where they are. And yeah, that's my answer to that. Oh, it's always a risk to talk about race and things like that, because you never know, like, oh, it's just, especially with what's been going on in the news cycle with police officers.
The the big as someone that's trying to figure out how to outreach these communities. The big
Yeah,
lesson I'm taking from it is we need to go talk to you and elevate individuals that are interested in our movement coming from your community. Those are like
yes,
the
yes,
two biggest signals I get from
yes,
them, and
yes.
that sounds good. That's like all right,
Yeah,
let's do that. Sounds like a great
that's
idea.
easy. It doesn't sound hard, right? Like, you go and you talk to them and say, what are your issues? I'm sure we have policies that will address them. What are your issues?
Yeah,
And then speak to those issues specifically.
yeah. I remember talking to the NAACP at ASU when we were still campaigning when I was working leading the Tempe outreach, and I just basically took our platform as like, all right, so this $3 trillion that we want to give out to everyone, the Black community gets $40 billion of that every month. Does that sound good to you guys? Like I hope I'm remembering my math correctly. I'm pretty sure it was 40 billion. Like,
Even if you're not correct, that sounds amazing.
yeah, that's like
I
hey,
mean,
you
how
have to
can you
think
say
about it
no
as
to
a
that?
commercial. Yeah. So I'm always torn on these racial issues because, and I think a lot of people in my age kind of feel this way, that we feel like we've learned a lesson. Like, all right, you guys need to be included in the conversation. You need to be elevated. What when it's appropriate and when you guys need to be enhanced or to be included in the conversation.
A
But at the same
focus,
yeah, but at the same time, we kind of feel like it, we're burdened with we're inherently racist or we're inherently privileged. So like, how are we a proper person to be enhancing you guys? Should we be even talking about it at all? Like, what do you guys want from us?
There is no easy answer to that, right? There's really
No.
no, it's just, there's just no easy answer. Because even in the terms of saying, what do you want from us? It makes it sound like, you're giving us something instead of us being able
Yeah.
to supply something for ourselves. And it creates this dynamic that's like, we're asking for something. Like, it's just this horrible conundrum that we're in. And the only solution is to focus on the solutions. Like we can't really, I mean, having the conversation is number one. You have to have the conversation. Like, even if it's awkward, uncomfortable, you don't like the way you feel while you're doing it, or you're afraid you're going to say the wrong thing, you will. I will. No one's perfect. We can't avoid like accidentally offending something we didn't know was like it's an impossible task, but it can never be resolved if we're not talking at all. You'll never know. So yeah, I and not every Black person's the same. We're all different. Like, I might be okay with certain statements where somebody who's had different experience than even I have, because I mean, quite frankly, I grew up in the reddest of counties of New Jersey. Okay. So
That
probably
seems
didn't
like a
even
lot
know
of
there
fun.
probably didn't even know there were red counties, but I didn't know any different. I mean, that's just where I
Mm.
grew up. I knew nothing different. This is what I know. And I had my own education when I went to college, and all the kids from Philadelphia were there, and I was different. You know what I mean? Like, there's this difference thing going on, and so I had to have an awakening of my own. So I can almost relate a little bit with the conversation being difficult, because I myself have had difficult conversations with people that look like me. Okay. So you just have to talk. And if you say something offensive, use your humanity first knowledge that that's what we do. And you teach humanity first by being humanity first. Um, there literally are no easy answers, but there will be no answers unless we start talking about it. And like all this stuff that's going on right now, lots of things come up and people ask me questions and we're talking about race, and it's tiring, but it has to happen. I mean, sometimes you just be like, can I just not be Black one day? Can I just not? I mean, just one day, but then I don't mean it like I don't want to be Black. I just don't want it to be a thing sometimes, but it just is. So we discuss it and we work through it and we come up with answers like every single month, that website, and we show that to people. If you live in
There's a
Harlem,
website.
yeah, there's a website called Every Single Month, which
I didn't know this.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I need to start promoting it more. And they're actually working on making it better, where you go in, you put your zip code or your city, and it'll show you um, how much money would come to that
Oh,
town.
gotcha. Yeah, I remember. I remember what you're talking about now. We do need to
Yeah,
promote that more. That's a great website.
absolutely. And you put anybody's zip code that they live in and show them, don't you want your whole community to get that money instead of it being, not in your hands and probably up in some corporate office, CEO, Yeah. Oh my gosh, I probably should go. This has been so awesome.
Yes,
And look at
it
that,
has
the
been. It's
telephone
been
rings.
great. It sounds great. All right, I need you to give us some advice. Where does the Yang? What's the next steps for the Yang game? What should we be keeping our focus on?
Well, recruiting, getting your infrastructure in place, and staying plugged in. Staying plugged in, I think, is most important with whatever outlet you've been using to stay plugged in, whether it be social media, whether it be YouTube, whether it be the Slack group, whether it's directly Humanity Forward. Stay plugged in so you don't miss when something important's coming for us to tell you what to do next. And then also, support our candidates, get involved with COVID relief calling. If you can donate to COVID relief, do that. And also, what's my third point? I always have a third one.
Have fun.
Yeah, enjoy being part of the biggest movement, the most important movement of this new decade. And we know we're right. We know we have the answers. Go out there and promote them. Do not be shy about it. We are right. There is no question about it. There is a better way to live than under capitalism the way it is now. We need human-centered capitalism. And we need you, each and every one of you out there who believes in this movement, to participate in any way that you find possible, even during these hard times in COVID.
Especially during these hard times. This
Yes,
chaos
this
is
is
perfect opportunity for a change. And
absolutely.
we might not have a better shot.
We might not. This might be it, and we can't blow it.
All right.
I'm with you guys every step of the way. Thank you
She,
for having me.
she really is. Where can they find you on social now that you're tweeting?
Um, I've changed all my social over to be my name. It's so crazy that I did that, but I'm at Ericka McLeod. Is Twitter, and my name is Ericka, which is like Eric Sanchez. You know how strange it is to work with another person that spells their name the same way as you, but they're the male version.
I'm
Um,
I'm I'm my name's Kyle. I get it all the time.
I bet you probably do, yeah.
another
I'm on
another podcaster named Kyle. All right.
another Kyle, Matt or Zach or Kyle or yeah. But yeah, so that's mostly where you'll find me. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, all the same spelling.
Yeah.
I
All right.
hope I hope you
Thank
guys
you for
can
coming
find
on.
me. Oh, and Reddit. I'm on Reddit. I forgot.
Oh, you on Reddit? That's good.
Yeah,
Reddit.
Erica for Humanity.
All right. That's great to hear. Here, 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 here.